Welcome to another episode of In the Garden with Margie. Now, as you can see, I'm in the house today because although it's March, in our area of the country, it's still too cold to plant anything. If you look back to how to start a garden, I show you the different planting zones. So look at where you are located and pick your planting zone. For us, we're still going to get snow in the middle of May. We've had snow as late as towards the end of May. We'll be planting before then, but still that's something to know. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how I plan my garden out because you don't want to leave things to chance. Now, if it's your very first garden, just look at where the sun is and let that be your guide. But let's look at how to plan out a garden, particularly your second year and so forth. Now, I want to stop for a minute and talk about planting zones because this is really important. Trust me, I've learned the hard way. We have a very short planting period. So as a consequence, there was one year that we went ahead and we planted watermelon. And we don't have a long enough planting season for watermelon. Two of the watermelon looked pretty good on the outside, but they weren't fully ripe for eating. So take your planting zone suggestions seriously because the last thing you want to do is spend the entire summer tending your plants only to find that they're not ready. Now, when you're planting your very first garden, it helps to get seed catalogs and a good gardening book. These catalogs have endless varieties of vegetables in both seed and seedlings. In my Vegetable Gardener's Bible, as with many gardening books, they'll also have an extensive list of various vegetables with the details that you need to know to help your garden be a success. When you're planting your garden, though, take time to look through what you actually eat. There's no point in planting zucchini if you don't like zucchini. It was fun to experiment with the watermelon, but we don't buy watermelon. So combined with the season that's too short, it's not something we buy. We're not going to do it again. After your first season, you want to consider what grows well and what doesn't. I love Brussels sprouts, but I heard they didn't grow well here, and I tried them one year, and they were right. I heard the same thing about bell peppers. I don't like green bell peppers, but I love red, but they don't turn red here. But banana peppers are great, and they work out really well to replace California green chilies nicely in a great chili relleno casserole. Now, my first year, once I figured out what it was we wanted to plant, I then created a master list for our most common vegetables. On it, I included such things as how much sun they needed, what rotation rules to follow, even if there were any particular varieties to consider, as well as what pH levels each plant likes. Now, I did a previous video on pH levels, so be sure to watch that for more information. Then I started a garden diary for our very first year, which I also highly suggest. In that diary, which is just a notebook, you're going to have all your gardening plans in there. And you also want to keep a log of the weather because trust me, you are not going to remember it later. And then it's just a matter of logging every time you go into the garden, every time you do something. Keep a log of what you do. And finally, the most important part about this log will be your year-end summary, because that's what you're going to go back and look at for the following year. I've talked about the importance of rotating crops in a previous video, but now I'm going to actually show you how to put it into play. I'm not going to go into detail with every year because that would take way too long, but I will address a couple things. Today, my husband and I sat down and we planned this year's garden. What we looked at was what we wanted. We then had to take into account which sides of the garden get full sun and which get partial shade. We then had to consider what plants went in each area last year. So as an example, last year, we added a new section just outside the garden. for a second zucchini plant. You can see that this year's plan, I made a little box at the top of that section. But because zucchini went there last year, we can't plant it there this year. But banana peppers and tomatoes, they can go there. We also found that we never have too much corn. So we'll again plant 2 sections of corn, but these areas are also rotated from where they were last year, which although they received partial sun, actually did pretty good. The only problem we had with the corn last year was the monsoon started early and we didn't stake them like we did the previous year, so we were out there the next day standing them all back up. If it hadn't have been for the extra rain, we actually would have had a really good crop like we did the previous year. Well, there you have it. Now you can literally throw some seeds into the ground and water it and see what develops, or put some seedlings into a pot. But as time goes on, if you want increased yield, decreased bugs, and be able to grow a garden without it taking over your life, spend the time in advance and plan it all out. The next video will be about soil, because next week we get our spring soil for the garden. If you have any questions or tips of your own, feel free to toss it out there to me. Subscribe to my channel for the upcoming videos, and again, thank you for joining me in the garden with Margie.